No Sweetness Here by Amma, aidoo. Chapter 1. Everything Counts. The opening chapter of the book, Everything Counts, centers on Cece, a young African woman who schools abroad. As an intelligent woman, she takes advantage of every opportunity that brings itself to react to the negative trend of the adoption of the Western lifestyle in Africa. While schooling abroad, Cece has argued with friends and relatives who are males over Africa's impression of the West and accepting wholesale anything that comes from the West and playing the second fiddle. While her male compatriots consider the wave of change sweeping through Africa as part of what they see as a revolution, she thinks otherwise. She sees the change as an unfortunate development and lack of earnestness. She remarks, "Listen, my brothers, if we honestly tackle the problems facing us, we wouldn't have time to worry about such things as wigs." However, coming from an African society which is extremely dominated by men, any little no one says to a boy's ears means one is asking for a battle. Cece continues to provoke her male colleagues with her condemnation of the Western lifestyle, which permeates every aspect of the African society. Cece's worries are confounded when she finally returns home after her postgraduate study to take up an appointment as a lecturer in one of the nation's universities. Her experience of the revolution, which shows only in the wearing of wigs, bleaching, and buying of second-hand goods such as refrigerators, as if a new god has been born while she was away, for whom there was a new festival, and when the celebration was over, they will remove the masks from their faces and those horrid-looking things off their heads. Her first day experience as a lecturer makes her see how African women are mocking their personalities through the wearing of wigs and bleaching. To her, it seems the girls and women she knew and remembered as having smooth and black skin turned light-skinned. People looked as though a terrible plague was sweeping through the land, a plague that made funny patchworks on the faces and necks. The university has become a citadel of an alien culture. She's amused by the kind of wigs worn by even students she knew while in her 5th grade in secondary school as typical country goods like Grace Mensa. These students feel uncomfortable carrying wigs, which made them sweat on their heads. Though wigs wearing is a foreign thing, Cece has defended it among boys across the sea. She considered wigs as useful, and should be worn occasionally during times she calls emergency. Cece is also confronted with the craze for the necessities and nonsense of life. Her family at home expects her to return home with a flashy car and not one of those little coconut shells with 2 doors, and refrigerators, which she sees as ropes with which we are hanging ourselves. In the absence of her husband Fifi, who is taking some time to visit a few African countries before coming home, Cece has time to satisfy her curiosity by watching the so-called beauty pageant Miss Earth and showing concern for people's desire for a change of degree she takes to be part of the revolution. No Sweetness Here. Chapter 2. For whom things did not change. Chapter 2. for whom things did not change, centers on three main characters: Setu, Zirigu, and the young doctor, Kwabena. Setu and Zirigu are husband and wife. Zirigu, the husband, is in charge of the government guest house. He lives in the boys' quarters of the guest house and works as only the cook there. He serves his masters with foreign dishes. The place before independence used to be occupied by expatriates. After independence, the big men who serve their community are natives who surprisingly take the same kind of meals taken by the whites. For the first time as a cook, Zirigu is impressed with the acidity and humility of young Dr. Kwabena, who becomes a resident in the guest house. Dr. Kwabena has just been posted there. He appears to love work. This chapter begins with knock on Dr. Kwabena's door. He has told Zirigu to wake him up at 8 o'clock in the morning. Zirigu and Setu, his wife, have noticed the difference between Dr. Kwabena and the others who have ever stayed in the guest house. In the words of Zirigu, this is a strange man. This young master, you can see he is very tired, but he insists that he should be waking up at 8 o'clock. And I wonder what he thinks he can do in a place like this from that hour. He must be one of these people who do not know how to rest, even when they are scholars. This remark from Zirigu exposes the lukewarm attitude of past residents of the guest house to work. Zirigu and Setu do not just admire Dr. Kwabena's hard-working nature, but also his lifestyle. He does not drink at all, and maybe he is a believer. Setu, who is a Muslim, thinks his behavior is like that of a Muslim. Another quality found in him is his little interest in women. Dr. Kwabena, unlike others, has failed to bring in women. Setu is proud of him because he has not been bringing one of those nasty pieces with their heads swollen outside like the meat and feathers of an overfed turkey. Setu takes the day off, not to sell again, but to see the doctor. Zirigu and Setu concern themselves with young girls who follow big and old men because of money and material things. The couple agrees that some parents support their daughters to follow men because these parents reap their benefits from their daughters' immoral behavior. Zirigu observes that parents do not fear their children, but it is those big men that they fear. Leaders are found to be those who befriend these young girls. Those who have power can make life uncomfortable for parents who do not agree to give them their daughters. While Setu thinks this behavior is new among leaders, Zirigu tells her that that has always been the case. All women are slaves to our laws. Setu thinks that the society is not safe in the hands of such leaders. She is thankful to God that she do not have a daughter. Setu wishes for the blood of all the big men, but her husband directs her attention to the fact that these big men have families and their relatives love them despite their immoral conduct. Setu grows too passionate about the subject, but Zirigu makes her understand the nature of both men and women. Women remain the same, just like men. Setu admits Zirigu's claim and cites Munatu's, whose relatives give her to a big man to get money to build a mansion. Setu despises such big men, such mothers, and such daughters. Meanwhile, Dr. Kwabena fails to wake up after Zirigu's first attempt to wake him up. Zirigu has to end the conversation with his wife to go and wake him up again. When Zirigu finally succeeds, the young doctor thinks Zirigu did not put much effort during the first attempt on his part. Zirigu finds it unusual to wake his master up while he is sleeping. Zirigu then has to find out from Dr. Kwabena what he will take for breakfast. He is surprised when Dr. Kwabena rejects all the foreign dishes for breakfast and all bottled foods and drinks. Dr. Kwabena considers the eating of such food instead of indigenous ones as slavery. When he insists on taking local foods, Zirigu too maintains that meals such as fried fillets of calf, a braised lamb liver, an escalope of veal with onion, and fried potatoes has been the food he has been preparing for his masters for the past 15 years. It is new for Zirigu and Setu when Dr. Kwabena opts for tuwo and pito instead of the white man's food. Setu received the news from the husband with disbelief. Zirigu, do you think this boy is right in his head? During Zirigu's 20 years or so years of experience as a general keeper and cook, he and his wife have never encountered Dr. Kwabena's simplicity, preparing foods of the land to white man's food and bringing himself down to the level of Zirigu and his wife. Dr. Kwabena's welcome attitude is a call for the elites to abridge the gap between them and the common people. He proves to the couple that he too comes from a similar background. He remembers his experience in Nana's farm and the abundance of vegetables and food crops such as yam and the taste of them. Much as Kwabena wants to eat the local food eaten by the couple, Setu's cooking takes a festive dimension. She is bent on preparing something special because the doctor is going to take some of it. When he tastes the food, he still identifies some unusual flavor that is not akin to what the couple may normally take. He is made to understand that he is likely to suffer frequent urge to free his bowels in the night, as he is not used to taking the local food. Eating the same food with Zirigu and his family that day brings the young doctor and the couple closer. It gives Zirigu the trust and opportunity to reveal his past and his experiences to the doctor. During their conversation that evening, Zirigu literally lectures Dr. Kwabena on various topics. One of such topics is the loss of value, such as respect for age in the past. Zirigu talks about his travel. As a young man, he has enlisted into the army during the World Wars. He traveled to areas such as Burma and Congo to fight without knowing why. However, he was able to learn about the white people. The notion of the supremacy of white people over black people changed because he found white people to be as imperfect and weak as black people. He learned that when white people are hungry, they can fight for food and cheat each other like anybody else. Zirigu narrates how his own biological brother spent his money he entrusted to him. He used to trade in Takrady in Yam. Before the war, his brother married a wife with some of the money and spent the rest. Zirgu was compelled to travel with Setu's brother to West African countries such as Togoland, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone. Besides, after the wars, he was engaged in peddling, bicycle repairing, and carpentry, among others. After traveling in vain, he trained in the big city as a cook. Zirgu has worked in a white man's home for 2 years. He narrates Setu's brother's suggestion to him to marry his sister Setu, who has lost her husband after having a son with him. Zirgu was getting too old. Though Zirgu was not a believer, Setu's brother recommended his sister for him to look after her. Zirgu praises Setu as always working for her own money by selling roasted plantain, groundnuts, and kaffa. Zirgu also narrates the circumstances that brought him to his present job. His white master had recommended him to the successor who was about to arrive in Gold Coast 3 months after his departure. He asked him to stay in the boys' quarters that he currently occupies. His old master later urged him to apply for the job of a government guest housekeeper, which will soon be vacant. Zirgu also tells us about his plans for his children, who are in school. He will not be able to look after them in college. Zirgu remembers the air of freedom that followed the departure of his white masters. He stopped wearing the uniform. However, he fails to get the needed recognition from his masters. He is quite impressed with the acceptance that is now received from Dr. Kwabena. Dr. Kwabena reminds Zirgu on his earlier promise to tell him something. That gives Zirgu the opportunity to continue to tell him about the former state of the place. He tells the doctor about the expansion work that was done after the freedom and the neglect of the structures. He criticizes the negligence of his own people. He mentions the renovation of his residence, which made him and his family for some time to vacate. Zirgu feels bad about the second-class treatment given to him by the managers of the government guest house, especially for over 10 years. He has kept the place well. Zirgu condemns the so-called big man's notion that a certain class of people do not deserve certain good living conditions. In Zirgu's own words, he remarks, "My own people, who are big men, do not think I should use these good terms they use." Zirgu is aware of the nepotism in the society and that he has kept his post till date not because of his family's social connection, but due to his good management of the place, which makes it difficult for the so-called big men to deny him of his job. He expresses his flight and wonders at what independence means, for he sees how elusive his country's independence is. No sweetness here. Chapter 3. In the curtain of a drink. In the 3rd chapter, in the curtain of a drink, the narrator, who is a male, uses an apostrophe to narrate his story. The vocative he uses are family relations like uncle or uncles, mothers, sisters, and brothers. All the people that he comes into contact with deserve any one of these titles. The narrator is simple and naive. He anticipates life in a city to be as simple as it is in his village. He embarks on an adventurous search for his sister, Mansa, who dropped out of school after class 3. Her family took her to a woman in Accra who promised to teach her to keep houses and to work with a sewing machine. Mansa returned home during Christmas and had ever since failed to come home again. The narrator, being a caring brother, sets out to Accra for the first time to search for Mansa. He has to put up with his uncle, Duayao, who lives at Mamprobi. When he arrives in Accra, he is also overwhelmed by the countless number of cars, buildings, and people that thieves do not find it difficult making away with his traveling bag. He is however lucky to attract the attention of a driver who takes him to Mamprobi station. He boards a Mamprobi bound bus and finally finds Duayao at 2:30 p.m. He is surprised to find Duayao sleeping on Saturday afternoon when his village folks must be busy working. The narrator is impressed with Duayao's progress. Duayao owns a set of furniture which fills up his small room that looks like a box. Duayao and Mansa were classmates before the latter dropped out of school. When Duayao learns the purpose of the narrator's journey, he is amused at how he can find his sister Mansa when he does not know where she stays and whether she is married or not. Duayao draws the narrator's mind to how difficult his search for Mansa will be, but he tells Duayao that he is still determined to do so. Even if Mansa was dead, her ghost will know that we have not forgotten of her entirely, that we had not let her wander in other people's town, and that we had tried to bring her home. They decide to search for Mansa the next day. It's time for supper. Supper was prepared from maize and cassava by Duayao's girlfriend. The food looks strange in the narrator's mouth as the three, including Duayao's girlfriend, ate together. Duayao introduces her as his will-be wife, whom his parents do not want him to marry because she does not come from our part. Before attending a dance that evening, the narrator briefed Duayao on news at home. Duayao learns that his father has married another woman. The atta disease has also destroyed their cocoa farm. When the narrator is told they are attending a dance, he tells Duayao about his stolen bag, which makes it impossible for him to change his clothing for the dance. Duayao, however, prevails over him to go with them with what he is wearing. The three persons, Duayao, his girlfriend, and the narrator, leaves for the dance. While on the street, the narrator is surprised to see a well-lighted street. Duayao buys tickets for their entry, and when the narrator enters the building, he is amazed to see a big building filled up with people while the band plays. He finds chairs and tables in the bar to be made of metals, unlike those in his village, made of wood. When asked to choose a drink, he opts for lamlali, while Duayao and his girlfriend go for beer. He is so surprised to watch Duayao's girlfriend cut beer like a man that he is unable to drink. He enjoys his lamlali while the lovers dance. Duayao later invites him to the dance floor, but the narrator thinks he cannot dance as well as the others, but Duayao urges him to dance to keep him warm. While they dance, Duayao draws his attention to four women who are seated at a table. He is surprised when Duayao tells him he can dance with them. Before he can approach those women, one of them voluntarily walked to him to dance with him. He agrees and they dance. He is attracted by her personality, her long hair, her complexion, her makeup, and her tight-fitting dress. At the end of the music, both retire from the dance floor, and when the lady rejoins her colleagues, the narrator hears them obviously laughing at him. He then realizes they were all bad women of the city. The narrator worries about these ladies and the kind of work they do, and wonders whether their families do not like them. When the music resumes, the narrator goes back to the dance floor, but he misses his dance partner because she and one other lady have been taken away, leaving two of them. He approaches one of them and they dance. During the break, the lady asks him to go and buy beer and cigarettes for her. As he considers buying the items, he is prompted to observe her closely. He condemns her for the prostitution she practices, and in the course of the exchange, he identifies her to be his own sister Mansa, who has turned into a prostitute. The narrator specifies his mission in the city, and the irony of it all is that I was sent to find a lost child. I found a woman. Mansa confirms that any kind of work is work, and she assures her brother that she will come home during Christmas. No sweetness here. Chapter 4. The Message. The message tells the anxiety of Mami Esi Amfua, who receives a telegram informing her that her granddaughter, the child of her late son, Kofi Emisa, has undergone a caesarean operation. When the villagers hear the news, to them, it is a foregone conclusion that if Mami Esi Amfua's granddaughter's stomach has been opened to remove her baby, that means she is dead. So the exchanges between Mami Esi Amfua and other relatives focus on the corpse of her granddaughter and how it will be handled by the hospital before she claims it. Her hope of the lady's survival was given way to despair when the telegram indicates that the operation was taken 3 days before. While Mami Esi Amfua prepares to leave for Cape Coast, her feverish attitude attracts neighbors and relatives. While they show concern, she sees some of them as mockers who have killed her only child, leaving their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and theirs hoot up like mushrooms. Mami Esi Amfua, for the first time in 20 years, since her church members went to meet the new Wesley chairman, her journey to Cape Coast brings into focus the repulsive attitude of drivers and the smelly language spoken by both drivers and their passengers. A hint of the driver's attitude to passengers shows when Kwabena is asked to tell Driver Annan to wait for Nana Amfua. Driver Annan remarks when he sees the old lady show a foreplay at what will happen in the car. He remarks, "Just look at how she hops like a bird. Does she think we are full already?" When Driver Annan later learns about Mami Esi Amfua's purpose for going to Cape Coast, he becomes sympathetic. Driver Annan raises the issue of modern women. While he finds the traditional woman to be fleshy, he thinks women of this age want to remain skinny. He makes his point saying, Now here is one who cannot even have a baby in a decent way, but have the baby removed from her stomach. Passengers in the car can hardly manage the space available. Mami Esi Amfua still has to be forced into the car, regardless of her bulky body. Note the exchanges between the driver and the scholar. Driver Anna reacts, "And do not scold on me. I know your sword too well. Something tells me you do not have any job at all. As for that suit you are wearing and looking so grand in it, it's either you borrowed it or hired it." The atmosphere in the car is typical of what is experienced in passenger cars. Before the car arrives in Cape Coast, every passenger has had his or her share of abuses from one passenger or the other. Mamiesi Amfua gets to the hospital with the help of driver Annan. It is difficult for her to identify her granddaughter since she does not know her real name. She only knows that her granddaughter was named after her, Esi Amfua. Besides, she thinks her name is Mary Kumsin. Dr. Jemfi is stunned by the personality of the old woman, and when Mami Esi Amfua finally sees her granddaughter, she screams with joy and disbelief. The least she expects, her granddaughter to be active and alive. No sweetness here. Chapter 5. Certain Winds from the South. This chapter is a protest against the youth traveling from the north to the southern part of the country to seek greener pastures. As Isa is about to do so, Amma Asana opposes the idea of Isa going to south when his wife, Hawa, has just delivered a son for saying it for him. This is because she has been a victim of such a travel. Her husband traveled to the south and got enlisted into the English army to fight during the World Wars. Her husband died in the war when her daughter, Hawa, was barely 3 days old. It is evening and Mma Asana has to collect her kola nuts. Kola is her source of income and she has dried it in the sun. While she collects them, thoughts run through her mind. The thought of pregnancy, birth, death, and pain, especially seeing patchy circles that marks where old pigs had been. She has lost her husband 20 years before, and Hawa, her daughter, has given birth to her grandson. She remembers the old days when meat was readily available to prepare food for nursing mothers. There will have been baths, and you got scolded for serving a woman in maternity a duca. As she prepares after the evening prayers, Isa, her son-in-law, calls in to see Hawa and her son, but she and her baby are already asleep. Mma Asana casts lots of insinuations at Isa to suggest his irresponsible behavior of living in another village while his wife and child live in another. In the course of their conversation, certain beliefs of the people are highlighted. Mma Asana's people believe in heredity. For example, Fuseni's circumcised genitals seems to delay in healing, which is a bother to Mma Asana. She indicates, "Not a single nerve of all that I have cut here got infected. Shall I now cut my grandson's and then sit and see it rot?" Earlier, Mma Asana passes a superstitious comment about spirits You never know what evil eyes are prowling these darks over this grassland. I must pick them up quickly. A similar superstitious belief is held about women who behave badly, like Maimuna. No, we do not hear from her now. She is not dead either. For we hear such women usually go to their homes to die, and she has not come back yet. To come back to the conversation between Isa and Amma Asana, Isa then tells Amma Asana that he is going to South to find some work. Amma Asana is angry to learn from Isa that he is going to South to cut grass. She is forced to ask, "But my son, why must you travel that far to cut grass? Is there not enough of it all around here? All this crowd, your fathers, and all the others in the village. Why do you not cut these?" Having received the news, Mma Asana thinks that Isa should not tell Hawa. Isa is not sure when he will return home with money to take care of his wife and his son. After Isa has left, Mma Asana wakes Hawa up in the morning and breaks the news to her. Hawa breaks to tears, but she is calmed down by her mother. Mma Asana advises her to behave like a grown-up and that Isa is traveling to work for money for her sake. This situation gives Mma Asana the opportunity to narrate her experience to Hawa. Hawa's father traveled and never came back. He died as a soldier, fighting for the people against Germans. Mma Asana thinks her husband died for no good cause, since he did not go to fight against the Gurunshis or the Gonjas, but against Germans overseas. Besides, his father was among the richest in the north. Mma Asana felt pain and had to forgo his benefits. She will react to suggestions for her to claim her husband's entitlement. "It was him I wanted, not his body turned into gold." Mma Asana adds that it is an economic pressure that has compelled Isa to South, but he cannot afford even goat flesh for his wife in maternity. Mma Asana sees a common destiny in her life and that of Hawa, her daughter. The husbands of both of them have traveled to the south. However, in the case of Mma Asana, her husband embarked on a useless adventure and never returned home, whilst Hawa's husband is going to work for money. The conversation has to end because Mma Asana is going to the market to sell her kola nuts for their upkeep. No Sweetness Here by Amma, Atta, Aidoo. Chapter 6. No Sweetness Here. No Sweetness Here is the title story. It is about the causes of conflict in marriage and their effect on the individuals and the society as a whole. A female school teacher is attracted by the beauty of her primary 4 pupil, Kwesi. This lady is simply called by the people Chicha, the corrupted version of teacher. Due to her affection for the boy, she becomes close to Mami Amma, Kwesi's mother. Chicha's fondness for Kwesi is so unusual that sometimes she makes some playful statements such as, "Kwesi is handsome. If ever I'm transferred from this place, I will kidnap him." While Chicha teases Mami Amma, she will show her love for her only son. Mami Amma is even prepared to receive her son's punishment in school on his behalf. The day before the Ahoba festival, Chicha visits Mami Amma who has returned from the farm. In the course of their interaction, she learns about the problems that Mami Amma faces in her marriage. She tells Chicha that she is seeking a divorce because of the rivalry she encounters from her husband, Kojofi's two other wives, and the opposition from his mother, his sisters, and other family members. Mami Amma is accused of witchcraft. This is because of her inability to give birth to another child apart from Kwesi. The truth is that Mami Amma does not receive any support from her husband. She takes care of Kwesi and is cheated by her husband in the sharing of her husband's farmland to his wives for planting of crops. Life is a battle for Mami Amma. While she prepares the evening meal, humming a hymn as a Methodist, she informs Chicha of her plans to divorce her husband the next day during Ahoba. Mami Amma tells Chicha many things going on in her life. For example, her mother-in-law accuses her of making her husband, Kojofi, buy expensive clothing for her. She adds that her mother-in-law wants to eat Kwesi up with her witchcraft, but because Kwesi has been baptized, she cannot do so. While the two women chat, Kwesi arrives home, his body dirty, and complains that he is hungry. Mami Amma sounds critical about Kwesi's appearance, but is betrayed by her unhidden love for her son. The next day, during Ahoba, Chicha has to rush to where the divorce case is taking place. These children play football, while Chicha leaves to witness the proceedings of the divorce case. Inside the goal post is Kwesi, who proves his goalkeeping skills to the admiration of his team players. She finally gets there while the trial is over, and Mami Amma is a divorced woman. However, bitter exchanges from the families of both Mami Amma and Kojofi go on. Some of these exchanges focuses on who should take care of Kwesi and the payment of the knocking fee. After the trial, Chicha has to return to school to close the children. She has failed to allow them to go home to enjoy the Ahoba festivities. When she finally got to the school, all the children have abandoned the school without Chicha dismissing them formally. She observes that the little girl, Grace Asen, has left her book in the class, but Kwesi has taken his away. She later sees all the children attracted by something, forming a circle at the end of the main street. The news she gets is that a snake has bitten the right arm of Kwesi, which has swollen to the size of his head. The chief medicine man from Sedu, the village next to Bamsa, has to be invited to attend to Kwesi. Unfortunately, Kwesi cannot survive the snake bite. He dies to the shock of all the people of Bamsa. His death is a blow, not just to Mami Amma, but to the whole village, particularly being the first people to die in the school since its establishment 6 years ago. The common verdict in the village is, he was his mother's only child. She has no one now. We do not understand this. Life is not sweet. Life is not sweet. It's a metaphor, which is a transliteration comments on painful experiences and difficulties of life. Mami Amma lost her only child. She has no husband now. Her parents have died earlier, and her relatives are jealous of her. They support her in the divorce case at Nana Kumi's house because they are obliged to do so. The death of Kwesi causes much stir in the village. Both Kojofi and Mami Ama's relatives trade accusation at one another. The spirits of both Mami Amma and Chicha are cowed by this tragedy. As for Chicha, Kwesi's death ends the destiny of a great and prominent man. Kwesi will have had education to become somebody in future. No Sweetness Here by Amma, Atta, Aidoo. Chapter 7. A Gift from Somewhere. A Gift from Somewhere relates Abuna Jiwe's early experience of childbirth and death. Abuna Jiwa has had her third child after two of them had died in their infancy. Her third child was also ill and emaciated, showing little hope of surviving. However, the arrival of a Malam, Papa Kramo, one afternoon reversed the near tragic fate of Jiwa. When by chance, the Malam's visit to find food from poor Jiwa to eat became more or less a divine visitation from the god of Mbemu. Papa Kramo entered Abuna Jiwe's house and seeing the ailing baby on her back, starts to behave like a medicine man, assuring her that her baby will not die. But just then, the baby's condition worsened. To maintain his dignity as a Muslim, he maintained that although the baby was on the verge of death, it will not die. To be able to escape before the baby died, even when he had not succeeded in getting any food from Abuna Jiwa, he prescribed some items to be used to save the baby's life. In addition to that, he told Abuna Jiwa to abstain from eating meat and fish from the sea on Fridays and Sundays. As she left for the prescribed items, the mother fled the village. When Abuna Jiwa returned, she could not find the Malam, who had escaped to avoid shame and embarrassment. Ironically, the dying baby began to recover. Abuna Jiwa had given up every hope and declared the baby dead. She was only waiting for people to return from their farms to bury it. Abuna Jiwe's belief in spirit revived. It was perhaps a promise from the god of Mbemu, which had fulfilled through the Malam. She praised the god and her ancestors. She named her baby Kweku Nyamiche. Kweku because he was born on Wednesday, and Nyamiche because he was a gift from God. Kweku Nyamiche's survival ended her mother's woes of burying her children. After him, Abuna Jiwa had other children to stop the impression that she was created to be pregnant for 9 of 12 months of every year. But have the children brought happiness that she needs in her marriage? People complain that she has spoiled her children. She does not have the happiness she wishes for in her marriage. She is her husband's first wife, but she laments. Something tells me it is his people and his wives who prevent him from having good thoughts about me and mine. Abuna Jiwa has observed that her husband disliked Nyamiche in particular, and instead of treating the children as his, he distances himself from them. For instance, he would say, Jiwa, your child is crying. Jiwa, your child is going to fall off the terrace if you do not pay more attention to him. Jiwa, your child this. Jiwa, your child that. Abna Jiwa remembers her husband once injured her while she tried to intervene when he was mishandling Kweku Nyamiche for going to the river to visit his traps. She still remembers the scars on her arm. She thanked God and Nana Mbemu for saving Nyamiche. She is prepared to suffer on behalf of her children. She remembers what happened between her and Malam. No Sweetness Here by Amma, Atta, Aidoo. Chapter 8. Two Sisters. Connie and Mercy are two sisters whose parents are no more. Connie is 6 years older than Mercy. She is a teacher, while Mercy is a typist. Connie, whom Mercy calls Sisi, is so protective of her sister that she wants her to stop following sugar daddies and marry a young boy like Joe. However, Mercy thinks her salary as a typist is not good enough for her. She has to make a decent living by moving around with sugar daddies. While Connie confesses, I love James and I'm not interested in any other man, Mercy is candid in her view. I am sure that I can love several men at the same time. The two statements made by the sisters informs us about their moral attitudes. Whilst Connie is already married to James, a taxi driver, and has 2 children, Akosia and a newly born baby, Mercy wants to go all out. As her shoes sing while she walks, count, Mercy, count your blessings. Mercy counts herself lucky that she is going out with both rich and ordinary guys. Her wishes, if she had only those graduates for a boyfriend, wouldn't he come and take her home every evening? She is already in love with Joe, but she has found Mensa Atta, a member of parliament. When she breaks the news to Connie, she does not accept her sister dating a 50-year-old man. Meanwhile, Mercy has accepted the pair of shoes and the handbag that Mr. Atta had bought for her, which she has shown to her sister. Mercy has arranged with Mr. Atta for them to see a movie at the Globe. When later the big man arrives in a big car with a super smooth engine, they both agree to go to the Seaway. When Mercy tells Mensa Atta about how her sister received the news about their friendship, Mensa Atta thinks he can buy her off. He decides to buy her a motor from London as a present to influence her. Mercy and Mensa Atta find themselves at Seaway, where Mercy had wanted to do what she fancies, drive very near to the end of the sun until the tires of the car touches the water. Mercy knows the disadvantages of befriending an I am old enough to be your father man. She observed things could be different, like if she had one younger lover, handsome, maybe not rich like this man here, but well off, sufficiently to be able to afford a sports car, a little something very much like those in the films, driven by the white racing drivers. Connie is saddened by Mercy's attitude toward life. She discusses it with her husband James, who has become nice to her after she has given birth. but she is dismayed by James' reaction. James supports Mercy following the Member of Parliament. Connie considers her husband wicked for supporting her sister's behavior. Meanwhile, Mensa Atta has returned from London. Mercy presents the motto to her sister. Despite her opposition, she does not reject it. She remains silent. Mercy moves to the estate house that Mr. Atta had bought for her. Unfortunately, a military junta successfully overthrows the ruling government in a coup. Mensa Atta is jailed. James's dream of getting a new car from him is aborted. Mercy is obviously forced to move from her new house. While James considered the coup d'etat as an unfortunate event, Connie thinks it is timely and has stopped her sister from being ruined. But does the coup d'etat stop Mercy from catching her big men? As Connie worries why Mercy has not come home and wonders where she may be staying after the coup, she later comes home followed by another big man, Captain Ashe, who has been appointed as a member of the new regime. The captain's picture has already appeared in a newspaper, The Crystal. He has a family, which includes his grandchildren. No Sweetness Here by Amma, atta, aidoo. Chapter 9. The Late Bad. The Late Bad deals with mothers' attitude towards their children based on their perception that some children are good because they are introverts and are always home, running errands, while others are branded bad and unsupportive because they are outgoing and playful. Yaba's mother, Mami Beyiwa, is guilty of selective treatment. She openly proves to Yaba, her own daughter, that she hates her, while she loves the other children. While she addresses Ajua as my child Ajua, she calls Yaba simply as Yaba to show that she is proud of Ajua. Yaba is always at the playground, under the big truck, playing with her friend. Her mother worries about this behavior of hers. It is believed that a girl should not play as much as a boy. So this trait exhibited by Yaba becomes the basis for her mother to treat her as an outsider. While it is Yaba who shows what a child should really do, she is treated unfairly for staying long on the playground. The other siblings are lauded and favored for being readily available to run errands for their mother. So to Yaba's mother, a good child is one who does not go out to play. Ironically, mothers of her friends, such as Penny and Kakra's mother, still love and care for them. On the eve of Christmas, Yaba has no new dress to wear to church. Her sister Ajua has already got one from her mother. Penny and Kakra have got theirs, though they spend their playtime with Yaba under the big truck. Yaba sometimes doubts whether Mame is her real biological mother or not. But in her society, children are forbidden to ask such embarrassing questions. While Yaba's mother gives the impression that her other children are supportive, she still needs more support to get her needs. For instance, she does not have red earth to varnish her floor before Christmas. Instead of calling Yaba and sending her to get the red earth for her, she rather complains that her so-called good girl Ajua is not available to run such an errand. At the same time, Yaba's mother is ashamed to beg a neighbor for the red earth. Yaba's deliberate efforts to make amends and save her mother from disgrace is thwarted by an accident. Yaba has learned from her friends, Penny and Kakra, that they will go to the pit for red eggs early in the morning before the church bells. Yaba then decides to be responsible and go with her twin friends. Preparations for the expedition does not go on well for Yaba. That evening, Maami Benyua subjects her to merciless beating for her failure to bath before going to sleep. Yaba that evening is seen by her mother as a curse. Maami Benyua laments, "Ah, my Father God, who inflicted on me such a child?" Yaba's mother has always failed to offer motherly advice to her. All the same, she expects Yaba to behave responsibly. She warns her, "Look here, Yaba, you are growing, so be careful how you live your life. When you are 10 years old, you are not a child anymore. And the woman that lives on the playground is not a woman. If you are a boy, it will be bad enough, but for a girl, it is a curse. The house cannot hold you." Yaba is still bent on going to the pit for the red eggs with her friends. She tries to locate the hole and an apampa. Unfortunately, she stumbles over the large water bowl, falls down, hitting her chest against the edge of the tray. She gets unconscious. When her mother hears the noise, she thinks thieves have come into her room. She raises an alarm, but when she goes to find out, she realizes that it was her daughter Yaba lying unconscious with a hole in her hand. Maami Benyua's suspicion that Yaba is a witch seems further confirmed. She wonders what Yaba can be doing in the dark past midnight. It has to take Ijayao, the village medicine man, treating Yaba with herbs to restore her back to normalcy. Whilst relatives and neighbors wait on Yaba, Penny and Kakra arrive early that morning to wake their friend for them to go to the red eggs. The mystery of Yaba's accident is then revealed. Everybody is surprised at Yaba's sudden change for the better. No sweetness here. Chapter 10. Something to talk about on the way to the funeral. Two gossips, a resident woman of Ofuntumasi and Ajua, who lives in Takwa with her husband, have just met on their way to Auntie Arabe's funeral. Auntie Arabe's death has attracted a lot of sympathy, and everybody, except those constrained by government work, desires to mourn her because of her good nature. Ajua predicts she is going to get a good funeral. Her death is a celebration of womanhood. While these women make for Auntie Arabe's funeral, we learn from their conversation about the virtuous life of Auntie Araba, the bewitching beauty of Auntie Araba during her youthful days, and even in her old age, how remarkable she was. According to the resident woman, she was always beautiful. Even 3 months ago, when they were saying all her life was gone, I thought she looked better than some of us who claim to be in our prime. When she was sent to the big town, where she learned how to bake bread and other pastries, it was obvious that her beauty made the big man, her only son Atu's father, to impregnate her. Since a good woman does not rot, she was able to survive the harm that the lawyer or doctor or something like that did to her life by marrying a good man, Eja Nyako. Auntie Araba's baking skills were unparalleled, so she is now credited with a bread song, which has now become a bosso song. It is said that the moment the aroma burst out of the oven, children began tagging their parents for pennies and 3 pence. The gossips attribute the success of Auntie Araba when she returned home pregnant to the matured way in which her mother handled the case. They remembered how Madakuma treated her daughter when she was once a victim of a similar situation. Mansa's father is also accused of badly treating her. These examples shows us that parents can contribute to the success of their children or to their failure. Auntie Araba's baking business, we are told, did not give her much money until she decided to focus on bread only. She had mixed and fried and baked epicie, tatare, achimo, bofrot, budo, budongo, and sweet bad. This is because, unlike town dwellers, villagers do not consider sweeties as real food, so selling them in a village was not profitable. Auntie Araba and her husband, Eja Nyako, lived good lives. Auntie Araba was considered a good Christian, a Methodist who went to church twice every Sunday. Eja Nyako was considered a good man who would not cheat on those who worked for him, unlike his successor. Auntie Araba's only bother was that if only she could not sleep, then it is because she wanted to give her son a good education. She tried to give her son the best of education, but before he was 6 years old, he was fighting her already. Ato was a spoiled child. His case even worsened when the lawyer or doctor or something like that man came to father him. Ato was then to start class 7. Auntie Araba's relatives wanted to teach the big man a lesson, but they were calmed down by the 2 big cars they came in with to claim Ato. Ever since, Ato has incurred debt for Auntie Araba to pay. To worsen Auntie Araba's plight, Ato impregnated Mansa. Her father was a proud man who wanted to educate his daughter in the white man's land. Because of the insinuations cast on Auntie Araba and Mansa's mother, Auntie Araba had to go for Mansa to stay with her. The gossip praised Auntie Araba's efforts. The relationship between her and Mansa is compared to that of friends, mother and a daughter or sisters. Auntie Araba wanted to care for Mansa and her child till Ato completed school, so that he will marry her. After school, Ato became a teacher. He was posted to another village. 2 weeks before Christmas, he wrote a letter to inform his mother that he would come home. Mansa as well as Auntie Araba were happy to hear the news. This was because Ato will finally marry Mansa. Mansa had to move to her parents' house, but Ato kept them in suspense. He did not come. When he later came home, he told his mother that he would not marry Mansa because he had impregnated another lady whose parents were big. Mansa was compelled to leave Ofuntumasi to make a living somewhere else with her son. Now, Auntie Araba is dead. The gossips believe our Auntie Araba is going to heaven. No sweetness here. Chapter 11. Other Versions. Other Versions is the glorification of motherhood. Kofi, the narrator of the story, acknowledges the woes of mothers and maintains that every mother deserves some reward or appreciation from her children. He recounts his experience after completing school. He was looking forward to entering the sixth form if his results were good. While awaiting results, he had to stay in town with his friend Beku to work for money in the post office as sorters. They had to stay in a small room in Beku's uncle's house. The size of the room is compared to a coffin. They were later made to pay some money by Beku's uncle's wife to support feeding, on the ground that this will make them experienced in budgeting in future. They had to manage to pay £3 each from the 12 months that each received at the end of the month. Both were bound to keep this deal as a secret in their own interest. Kofi had to manage the meager amount that he was taking and send some home because his mom had told him that he should use his first salary to buy gin and pour libation for blessings and prosperity. He had to board the tailor's animal, Anna's car home. Kofi's mother was filled with joy when he arrived home with his first pay. However, he was worried when his mother asked him to give the money to his father. Kofi's mother appreciated whatever her husband gives to her, but Kofi did not because he thought his mother was doing better than his father out of the sales of clothing. Kofi had learned that what his father gave to his mother was not always enough to feed them, yet his father complained. Fortunately, Kofi won a scholarship with the help of his chemistry master, Mr. Bunsen, to an American university. While abroad, he comes into contact with two black women. One of them is Miss High, who he met in Mr. Mero's house during the dinner. He meets the other two black women in the subway while returning to campus after visiting a boy. He usually feels that those women had to work hard to cater for their families. He had wanted to give the second woman some money. Kofi has a special fondness for women because of the suffering of his mom.